Hello and welcome to another edition of the Andrew Eborn Show, where my very special guest is writer, raconteur, comedy legend, and national treasure, the wonderful Barry CRYER. How are you, Barry?
I didn't recognise the description. Legend as in not real.
Oh, we love it. It's been an absolute joy. And I'll tell you what, talk about a joy trying to get hold of you. You've just moved fairly recently, haven't you?
Yes, we were so lucky. We downsized. We're in a flat with a garden. We've got two sons locally who look after us. We're very lucky, so we just shut up because so many people are having a horrible time. I feel sorry for the young ones now. They've got their whole life ahead of them. And they're thinking, what is this? It's unique. I mean, I'm old enough to have been around in the Second World War and the Blitz and everything. Although in Leeds we were very lucky. The war was horrible, but you knew what it was.
Yeah.
This is a mystery from day to day. U-turns and tears and ups and downs and backtracking and everything. We're in very bad hands, I'm afraid.
And it is quite tricky. I mean, a lot of people, I mean, you've adapted over the years to virtually every possible scenario. A lot of people are now reinventing themselves, including comedians who can no longer have, obviously, the fix of a live audience. How are you coping in lockdown?
Well, I'm fine because I had 60-odd years of it. I'm officially retired. I'm fine. And as Alan Bennett said, your life doesn't change much. If you were a writer, you were sitting at home anyway. But last week we recorded two of our radio series, Sorry I Haven't a Clue, from home, and we could all hear each other. And our producer, John Naismith, had got 100 people in their various homes. They were our audience. So it was chaotic. I mean, he's got a heck of a editing job to do on it, but I mean, couldn't believe it. We were recording our radio series.
And that's the extraordinary things about it. I think because people have adapted in this most extraordinary way to getting people around the world. I don't know if you saw on television when Lady Gaga did her concert with various musicians, and we had the Rolling Stones, 4 of them, all little in their boxes in their Zoom, playing their instruments at home.
Yes, yeah. It's a unique period. We've had nothing like this before.
It is quite extraordinary. Well, you mentioned about Leeds. I mean, you were born in Leeds. I mean, you probably knew that. I went to Leeds Grammar School and Leeds University to study English literature. And your first break was in the University Revue. Talk to me about that.
Well, I was a failure at university, chasing girls and in the bar and everything. I had to own up to it. I'm BA English failed of Leeds University. And in recent time, they made me an honorary Doctor of Arts.
Oh, I know.
What?
What I loved about that, Barry, as well, that was Melvyn Bragg gave it to you, didn't he, on the 13th of July, 2017?
That's right. And I'd done the university student show, the Rag Revue charity show at the Old Empire Theatre in Leeds when I was at the university. And the following year, when I was no longer at university, Jeff, the producer of the subsequent show, wasn't well or something. They got me back to produce and appear in the student show when I was no longer at the university, right. Which was great. And a man came up to Leeds to see somebody, not me, saw me on the stage telling jokes and offered me work. I mean, you couldn't make it up. It's called serendipity, isn't it? Being in the right place at the right time. I was no longer at the university at the time. How lucky can you be?
No, absolutely. And what do you remember about that show? Because I mean, that's the sort of famous one at the University Revue, isn't it? Because you were then offered a week's work at the City Variety Theatre, weren't you?
That's right. My hometown, obviously. And Stanley and Michael Joseph, the brothers who ran the Variety Theatre in those days, they discovered, previously they discovered young Frankie Abelson at the College of Art, who changed his name to Frankie Vaughan.
Oh, yes.
And became a big star. Anyway, I was going home for supper every night. My dad had died. It was just me and my mum. My brother was away in the Merchant Navy. And I was at the the bottom of the bill, obviously, with strippers, because the theatres were suffering from the advance of television in those days. So they had bills full of strippers, which lost the family audience. And I would go on every night and do my act and go home to supper with my mother. And of course, she never asked how it had gone.
Right.
And that really hurt. So by the Wednesday, I'd given up. But on the Saturday, we had a matinee. So I went midday to the theatre, and the woman in the box office said, "Come here, you. Was that your mother last night?" I said, "Was what my mother last night?" My mother was quite small. She said she had a rain hat on, and she came up to me and said, "Well, this is the night before, the Friday. What time's Barry CRYER on?" She said, "In about 10 minutes, love." And she said, "Can I buy a ticket?" She said, "I said to your mother, no, you can't. You're going in." And she got the commissionaire in those days, oh my God, to show my mother in and show her a seat. But she didn't sit down. She stood at the back and watched. And then after she'd watched me do my act, she fled away into the night. No decent woman would be seen in such garages. And I got home that night and I said, "You came last night, didn't you? You saw the show." Yes.
Extraordinary.
So I waited and I thought, what's she going to say? She said, "The suit looked nice." That was her complete comment.
Right.
I later found out she said to my auntie, "He was very good. But she didn't tell me because I might have got too big for my boots, you know." It's a strange, well, she was Cumbrian actually, but so it's a very Yorkshire thing about, you know, don't let him get carried away with himself. The suit looked nice. I treasured the memory of that comment.
And it is extraordinary because families do sort of ground you, don't they? And I think sometimes it's helpful because you've had such a stellar career. And in terms of making sure that you stay grounded, I guess your mother was the starting point, wasn't she?
Yes, exactly. Oh, she was great.
No, absolutely. And what did she do? Did she work other than looking after you?
Oh, yes. She was the traditional housewife, always in the kitchen, cooking, cleaning, and everything. She was the stereotype, bless her, but she supported me utterly. She was great to me. Goodness knows what she thought of me. Show business, what is that? I never found out what she really thought about my choice of so-called career.
Well, she liked the suit, Barry, so that must have been good.
Sorry?
She liked the suit, so that must have been good.
She liked the suit. That was a good start.
So where did you get the suit from? Who paid for that?
The suit?
Yeah.
A good question. Mysterious men would appear at our house from time to time.
Right.
I later discovered they were Masons.
Okay.
My late father was a Freemason, and they were checking in to see everything was all right, and my mother was okay and everything. I think I've never been asked that before. They probably paid for the suit.
Oh, there you go, you see. I thought we must, after your 85 years in the business, I thought somebody's going to ask you a question nobody's ever asked. So,
well, that was the one.
Ah, fantastic. I can retire a happy man now.
Yeah, my late father, God bless him, was a golfing Freemason accountant.
Right, good heavens.
What is my DNA?
So what did he, I mean, so he was an accountant, so that figures, did he have his own firm or did he work for somebody else?
Yes. And I found out, I mean, people maybe were trying to say the right thing, he's a very popular man.
Right.
And he and our next door neighbour, Frank Pateman, they would play golf and go to the pub and all that. And I was always, I've been envious all my life when people say my dad and my father, because I hardly knew the man. I mean, he died when I was about 5.
Right.
And these little memories, I've got a photograph of him. I've got no tape of his voice. I wouldn't recognise it if I heard it. I've got no film of him. And just these little memories. He bought me a papier-mâché fort with lead soldiers. Lead soldiers, can you imagine?
Oh, you can't have those these days. Health and safety.
We had one of those putting together a plane in balsa wood and everything.
Oh, I remember those, the Airfix models.
Did that together, I remember that, and I picked it up and flew it, and it went straight into the fireplace. So my memories of him are few, which
well, I love
sad about, you know.
Yeah, no, I get it, but I love the fact he gives you toys that health and safety wouldn't let you have anymore. Lead soldiers.
Lead soldiers, kids sucking lead soldiers. You know, it's just alarming to look back, isn't it?
No, absolutely. And did you talk to your mother about your father? Did you ask what he was like?
I tried to. She wasn't very forthcoming. She never talked about my father unless directly asked, and then it was quite short and succinct what she said. It was so painful, I think she didn't want to talk about it.
Really? Oh, no, well, it must have been tough. I mean, bringing up a 5-year-old Barry must have been quite tough doing that all by herself.
Yeah, my brother was 9 years older than me, John, and subsequently went into the Merchant Navy. And then he came back to Leeds, and then he disappeared to London to be a civil servant. So it was me and my mum. That was my upbringing.
Right. And so your brother becomes a civil servant. You start working in these strip joints, and they used to have these sort of nude tableaus, didn't they? Famous places like the Windmill Theatre.
Yes, and they weren't strippers. They're still friends of mine to this day, some of the women I met then. They were nudes. They did not strip.
Right.
And we had reunions, you know, Bruce Forsyth, when he was, bless him, when he was still with us. I've got photographs of me and Bruce at a Windmill reunion. And I met him at the Windmill. And 6 shows a day, 6 days a week. 36 shows a week. I'm not making this up.
Whoa.
And I do my little 12-minute act 36 times in the week.
And do you? I mean, you're absolutely right. And there was a famous movie done. A friend of mine actually had produced it with Judi Dench about the Windmill Theatre. And you're right. It was they were nude.
Mrs. Henderson.
That's right. Mrs. Henderson Presents. That's the one.
And the great Vivian Van Damme. What a name that is. Known to us all as VD.
Right. Yes, you don't want that.
He'd taken on this little theatre in Great Windmill Street in London.
Right.
And it wasn't doing too well. I don't know what they were doing with it, plays or little musicals or whatever. And somebody, whether it was her or him or somebody, suggested nudes. And the man who called all the shots in those days was the Lord Chamberlain in the government.
Right.
And he was told about this and forbade it, so said, you can't do it. And the great Van Damme got some reproductions of classical old nude paintings. This is true.
I know.
And he went to see Lord Chamberlain and showed him these paintings. He said, this is what we're doing. And he got the go-ahead. And that was it. It was a legend, the Windmill then. It kept running through the Blitz. We never closed. And some wit, knowing that it was full of nudes, said it should have been called We Never Closed. And Bruce and I would sit chatting in the canteen, and he said, oh, I'm packing it in.
Right.
I said, what? He said, I've got as far as I've got to get. I'm going to pay. And whether it was a joke or not, I said, what are you going to do? He said, little shop, tobacconist or something like that. I said, what? And the next year, 1958, I'd heard my friend Bruce was going to be the new compere of Sunday Night at the Palladium.
Funny, isn't it?
And I'm walking down Kingsway in London, and he's coming towards me. Baz! He'd been to a press conference. His first one was coming up that Sunday. Millions of viewers in those days, live.
Right.
And I actually said to him, what's happened to tobacconists? He said, postponed.
And how? I mean,
he together a lot on the Generation Game and everything. Subsequently, he became a great friend.
Yeah, and I mean, talk about other. I mean, the Windmill gave birth to lots of people, didn't? I mean, Sir Harry Secombe was there, Peter Sellers, a number of great names.
Oh, the people who worked there, yeah, Morecambe and Wise, and Tony Hancock, everybody had a start there, and you learn to die with dignity because they only come to see you. They come to see the nudes.
Right.
And, you could do your act to silence. And it picked up a bit later on when the pub crowd came in.
Right.
Jimmy Edmondson and Geordie went on one afternoon and was starting his act, and a man in the front row opened a newspaper. And Jimmy said, "Oh, I see you brought your own comic." No, it was a marvellous school. I was there for several months. I mean, do the math. I don't know how many hundred shows I did.
Well, I think you were there
for anything.
Yeah, you were there 6 shows a day, 6 performances over whatever it is, 6 times a week for 7 months. I think it was, wasn't it?
Yes, I had a month or two away at one point doing some other stuff, but whichever way you look at it, it's probably several hundred shows.
Oh no, absolutely. But what a great grounding. Do you remember the sort of material you used to do?
Oh, jokes. I mean, you had to finish with a song. I'd write my own song. Okay. And I think at my Windmill audition, I sang a song about Elvis Presley's Army Medical.
Right.
That was topical. And, it was conveyor belt auditions in the morning. I had a 17-day rail return ticket. Right. I was going to conquer London in 17 days. And David Nixon, the magician, who I'd been his dresser off stage and assistant, he was my mentor in London. He was marvellous to me. Got me introductions and auditions, but I wasn't getting anywhere. And the day before my 17-day rail return ticket ran out, I got an audition at the Windmill. Right. About 10:30 in the morning or something. And I told some jokes and sang a song. And this voice in the darkness, Van Damme, the boss, do any more jokes? So I told some more jokes. No, another song? I said, yeah, but I haven't got any music. Ronnie will busk for you. That was Ronnie Bridges, the pianist who became a friend. Right. So I did that. Thank you. So I thought, oh, that's it. And then another man called John Law, who became a friend, came on the stage and said, dressing room 12A. I said, sorry, what? He said, you've got the job. Oh, brilliant. I was on the stage at about 12:20, midday. Right. The show started at 12:15, the first show. I was at the bottom of the bill. And I did 6 shows that day and rang my mother. She had no idea what I was talking about. Yeah. I'm a Windmill comedian. And the old man had me in his office between nearly every show that first day, and he changed my act. You tell that joke too early, here's one you could do. And he was an amazing man. Quite incredible. And your mother's reaction, I mean, it's obviously important to you. I mean, you get the audience all the time, and comedians feed off the audience. But the biggest love that you want really never really happened by the sounds of it. Never what? Sorry. Never really happened with your mother. She never really turned around to you and said, listen, Barry, I really love what you do. Not in so many words, but I could tell she was pleased. And she never discouraged me from doing show business, bless her. Right. And I think she was pleased it was going well, you know. And what do you think she thought of the nude tableaus? Oh, I never knew that. Never knew her reaction to that. I should think she'd been horrified. Well, I'm trying to think of my own mother. I think she would. I think you'll work on that sort of basis, because it was quite scandalous in those days. And if somebody, as you say, they had to stay incredibly still because they were supposed to be tableaus. We used to go behind the scenery and say rude things to try and make our mates wobble. Right. You could sit with your mate in the canteen, and she was wearing a G-string and something draped round her, very little else. That was all right. Right. But if there was a Y junction at the top of I'm not making this up, the stone steps to the dressing room. Yeah. There was a Y junction at the top. Go to the left for the women, the girls, the strippers, go to the right for the men. Right. If you were found on the other side, their dressing rooms, you got the sack. He ran a very strict place, Van Damme. Very strict. And very, I mean, what a way to do it. And as I say, it became legendary on that sort of side. But you mentioned about the music career and singing a song, and that led to your next venture, didn't it? Where you went off to the Espresso Bongo. Talk to me about that. That was 1958, the following year. And I was in digs in one room in North Finchley in London. And I got this audition for this new musical. And I thought, oh, what am I going to do? I better sing, but I haven't got a song. So I wrote a song. I sat in my room and wrote a song called Espresso Bongo. And there was a man in Archer Street called Doc Hunt, I'm saying that very carefully,
Thank you.
who ran a music shop, musical instruments and everything. And I'd got a few quid in my pocket, and I said, I met the man. I said, I want to hire some bongos. He was amused. Why? I told him. And he gave me for a couple of quid or something. How long do you want them for? I said, about 2 hours, I think. And I got these bongos. I couldn't play them at all. And I went on the stage, and I told a couple of jokes, and then they said, have you got a song? I said, yes. I haven't got any music, but I've got these bongos. So there's an interested air in the, okay, go on. So I sang my song, banging the bongos, nearly knocking them down onto the stage. Kid from a back street with a crazy beat. And I finished, and there was a stunned silence. And Monty Norman, who worked on the show, lyrics, came on the stage and said, where did you get that song? I said, I wrote it last night. He said, thank God for that. He said, we thought we were going to get sued. Somebody had a song. I think I got the job through sheer cheek.
Right. And it was quite a crowd as well, wasn't there? It was Susan Hampshire and Paul Schofield.
It was a wonderful show. The people at Charles Gray and Aubrey Morris and people who became friends subsequently. We ran for quite a while.
Now, and what I also love, Barry, is that it led to you being number one.
Paul Schofield,
oh yes,
less.
Yeah, Paul, absolutely.
A man who'd made films by then and big theatre star and everything. A lovely guy. He'd never done a musical, and he loved it. And Bert Rhodes, the MD, told me that Paul, when he was singing, he was a natural. He was right on the note. He could really sing. And but his timing would be off sometimes. He'd cut several bars when he was singing. Right. And Bert would cut the rest of the band, and the pianist would keep playing, trying to find out where Paul was. Right. And he was a lovely guy. His dressing room door was always open. And his catchphrase was, don't say hello then. And you'd go in, and we used to have drinks after the show, and he's a lovely guy. And we opened in Newcastle. And Millicent Martin was in it. And he would make his entrance into a dressing room in the show and kick the door shut behind him. And when we were on tour, they had just a little set, to represent the dressing room. Right. And first night in Newcastle, Paul comes through the door, kicks it shut, and the whole set fell over. Crowd of dust and everything. The audience could see the back wall of the theatre and everything. Stunned silence. And he said to Millie, he looked at this wreckage, turned to Millie Martin, and he said, mice. Lovely guy.
Oh, absolutely glorious. But also your time there, it led to you being a pop star, didn't it? In Finland, I think it was.
Well, there's a man called Sheb Woolley, who was a country singer and actor. He was one of the baddies in High Noon who were going to kill Gary Cooper. But he had a big hit in America with a song that he'd written, The Purple People Eater.
I love it.
Like E.T., it was, come down from space. And it was a big hit in America, bit of a hit here. And but it wasn't issued in Scandinavia for some reason, contractually. And I'd recorded a little English cover version. And they put mine out, and I was number one in Finland. I'm very proud of that.
Oh, it's fantastic. And I was listening to it this morning just to remind me of it. And absolutely brilliant lyrics. Who wrote it?
Sheb Woolley.
He wrote fantastic. And it's
yes. Yes.
A big hit all over the place.
Recording career.
Right. And I think it was on
records with an option, and the option wasn't taken up.
Right, and yes,
But, no,
extraordinary.
it's on my CV. #1 in Finland.
Oh.
I say they gave away a car with each record.
Absolutely glorious. And then you then went on to work with Danny La Rue and various other things. Talk to me about.
So lucky, yeah. I'd written a couple of sketches for Anna Quayle, the actress, a friend of mine, and she was at the Little Fortune Theatre in London, and Danny La Rue was in one night, and he said, "Who wrote that?" And they told her it was me, and me and Ted Dix, the pianist, were both signed up to write Danny's nightclub show.
Right.
At a club called Winston's in Clifford Street, not before Danny had his own famous club. And we both went there, and that's where I met my wife.
And you have had one of the longest marriages in showbiz, because you actually, you've been with Teresa since 1962. You got married, didn't you?
58 years, yeah.
58
We're
years.
aiming for the diamond wedding, I think. That's 60 years, isn't it?
Yeah, 60 years would be the...
Mike Palin, my old friend, he and Helen have been married about 54, 55 years. He said it's called inertia. I think, found the right one, done that.
Right.
Move on.
Yeah. So a lot of people will say, because showbiz in particular is very difficult for relationships, a big strain on the demands. What's been the secret of your successful marriage?
We've never understood each other. She's the least boring person I've ever known.
Oh.
We argue all the time.
Right.
I said to her one day, "We disagree about everything, don't we?" She said, "No, we don't."
And how did you meet Teresa?
Sorry?
How did you meet?
Well, it was a rehearsal for the nightclub, and I met. She was standing by the piano. I thought, "Ooh, who's that?" And I met Ronnie Corbett the same day. I met my wife and Ronnie Corbett for the first time the very same day.
Right.
Tossed a coin and married her.
I bet Ronnie was disappointed, wasn't he?
No, Ron.
Right.
Ron used to tell that story himself. He loved it.
Oh, glorious. So wonderful. So you married Teresa, and you've now got 4 children, is it?
Yes, 3 sons and a daughter, 7 grandchildren, and a great-granddaughter, Isabel.
Wow.
Whose birthday is Bonfire Night.
Oh, fantastic.
November the 5th, she's just had her birthday.
Yeah, well, the trouble is you probably haven't had a chance to see her in lockdown, have you?
No. We saw her way back before lockdown when she was virtually a baby.
Right.
Now she'll be walking about all over the place. We can't wait to meet up with her.
No, it's all very interesting. So that sort of stage as well. Whilst you were working with Danny La Rue, a certain David Frost got to hear about you. Tell me about that.
Well, there again, you're in the right place at the right time. We did the show one night. Ronnie was in it, and David Frost was in. It was massive at the time on television, and invited us for a drink. It may have been the very reason he came. See the show, and as a result I became a Frost writer, and Ronnie became one of the Frost Reports, the television series. And Ronnie was in a show called Twang by Lionel Bart, which was a flop, sadly. And Ronnie always said, if the show had been a success, I couldn't have done the Frost Report.
Right.
He said, I owe it all to being in a flop.
And it's so often the way, isn't it? But you were also in that very famous sketch about the 4 Yorkshiremen. How did that come about?
I didn't write that. That was in a show, at last, the 1948 show. It was often referred to as a Python sketch, which used to annoy Tim Brooke Taylor, bless him.
Right.
Because he said, no, the original was in our show, and I played the wine waiter in that. Very briefly, so I can proudly claim I was in the 4 Yorkshiremen sketch when it started.
Oh no, absolutely! I saw that glorious sort of moment. And you've also had, and you, as you say, you became a regular then working with David Frost. What were your fond memories of David?
Oh well, I called him a practicing catalyst. He was brilliant with people, and he'd spotted that Graham Chapman always worked with John Cleese in those days. But Frosty had discovered Graham and I had become mates. And of got us to write together. We never thought of that. We wrote about 50 shows together in the finish,
right,
including Ronnie Corbett's original sitcoms and things. And, Frost was amazing. I mean, he helped to bring down an American president, for God's sake, Richard Nixon.
No, absolutely. Famously done in that movie, recreated.
He got Nixon to apologize in front of the camera. Do you think you should apologize to the American people? Yes. That went all over the world.
I know Frost versus Nixon was superb. Did you enjoy the movie recreation with Martin Sheen?
Oh yes, Martin Sheen was superb as Frosty, with Frank Langella as Nixon.
Yeah.
Oh, somebody, not me, did the joke about David because he was king of the castle at the time. They said he had an open-top convertible car. And they said if it started raining, David pressed a button on the dashboard and it stopped raining.
Glorious. But he was incredibly powerful in television, wasn't he? With his own production company, Paradigm Productions.
That's right. And it went up and down. There was a period when he, was up north of Yorkshire television, and one way and another, he had a career like a roller coaster, but the Nixon interview was sold all over the world, and that really put him back with a bang.
Oh, no, absolutely.
The Americans had never heard of it.
Yeah. And quite extraordinary.
So old as this young English guy, I'll eat him for breakfast, and little did Nixon realise what was going to happen.
I know, and it is extraordinary. I mean, and David has such charisma that it's quite disarming the way that he would just talk to his guests, make them feel at ease.
John Major said being interviewed by David Frost was like sitting in a warm bath, but brace yourself for the deadly question. Suddenly it was a cold bath.
Right.
Because he relaxed his guests. He was very, very friendly and casual with them when he interviewed them. But at some point he'd ask the question in the same tone of voice.
Right.
And they'd answer and say, "Oh, I've done it."
And that's the real skill, isn't it? I had the joy of being interviewed by Sir David Frost when he was on Al Jazeera, because and we met beforehand when I was at the Magic Circle, and he was talking to me about Penn and Teller, and somebody had stolen one of their magic tricks, and he was talking about copyright and intellectual property in magic tricks. And I every time I was sitting there being interviewed by David with his red socks on, I had my red socks on. I always remembered Frost and Nixon, and that's waiting for that killer question.
Yes, yeah.
But quite a joy. But he also, as you say, he introduced you to lots of writing partners, and you as a writer, I mean, you've collaborated with lots of people. Talk to me about some of those collaborations.
Ray Cameron, the late, sadly, Ray Cameron, father of Mike McIntyre.
Right.
He and I were the original writers on the Kenny Everett show.
And
we were joined by other writers subsequently, but we started it and created it, Everett had one or two TV series and been disenchanted. He loved radio, that was his genius. But he was signed up by Thames Television, and they thought he was going to be the sort of television disc jockey. But Ray and I started writing comedy stuff for him between the guests and the songs, and this grew and grew until it was a comedy show with musical guests. And that was a marvellous period. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, and absolutely. But you also wrote his movie as well, didn't you?
Bloodbath at the House of Death.
That's the one.
With the great Vincent Price. And yes, Barry Norman, who was a friend, Barry Norman did his film program, and he came on location with us while we were filming it and showed stuff in his program about us filming on location. And then the film came up, and one week Barry said to the viewers, some of you may remember we went along and joined them while they were making this film on location. I've just seen the film. Oh dear. That was his review. Ray directed it, bless him, and he shouldn't have done. We should have got somebody else in to direct it, but it had its moments.
Yeah. And do you, I mean, a lot of people say that you can have 99 fantastic reviews, but you have one bad one. How do you feel about bad reviews?
Well, you've got to acknowledge them, you know. I mean, you just go ahead. It's the viewers or the customers in the theatre who decide, not the critics. Somebody said the relationship of the critic to the programme is the relationship of the dog to the lamppost.
Oh, absolutely. And
dear, I'm enjoying this, but I'm really exhausted.
Are you done? Do you want to take a break?
Oh boy, yes.
Okay. Well, we'll get you back, Barry, if that's okay.
Okay.
We would love it. But for now, Barry CRYER, thank you very much for being my guest.
You're welcome.
Take care. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.